Good morning. Okay, just a quick update after my Facebook post the last couple of days looking at terms and conditions for salaried children's and youth workers. I've kind of been overwhelmed by your response with loads of comments, some being sent to me personally, people wanting to stay anonymous in terms of some of the things they were sharing. Some of it is just amazing to hear how committed so many of you are to ministry, almost regardless of the kind of support that you're receiving, whether that is about being paid properly, being paid enough, the working conditions for some of you. Just some of that's heartbreaking. Some of it just makes me realise how important this is to address and think about together. But also to go beyond that, I don't want to just do stuff on my Facebook page where people read and go, yeah, you're right, and nothing happens. 25 years ago, the Church of England, I think it was 25 years ago, did a report called Youth Apart, and it was fantastic. It's one of the best things I think the Church of England's ever produced, talking about youth and children's work. The sad thing is, thinking about it now, so much of what was in that report has never been implemented. And that's a quarter of a century later. I don't want that to happen with this. I'm 50 this year. I've been doing this a long time. And for the last decade, I've been concerned about and talking to other people about decent terms and conditions, having an agreed standard across the church, not just the Church of England, for youth and children's workers, the salaried people that we employ in local churches, but put together one of the largest employers of youth and children's work in the country, and we're just not looking after you properly. So here's 4 things. I've got to look at them on my little bit of paper where I think we're up to. The first thing that came across really in terms of your responses and feedback and the input from a few clergy, not enough in terms of let's have a really good dialogue about some of the challenges here. But first thing was the tension between vocation and job. And while we're under this kind of thing of being employed, I do think that gives a bit of a cop-out in terms of the church, the wider church, thinking, well, you're employed by local churches, therefore you're an employee of the local church, and somehow that means there's less accountability, less responsibility the wider church takes for workers. However, if we're vocational and we're employed on similar terms to clergy, then the wider church has to pay more attention to who we are and what we're doing. And I think that's a challenge, vocation versus job, and this just being work, or actually this is a ministry, this is a calling, this is stuff that many of us are giving our lives to, and just looking for that support and encouragement that will keep us going and keep us in this for the long haul. Second thing is, just in terms of the Church of England, there's some roles nationally that the church recognises as being distinct. One of those is being in the church army and being a church army evangelist. That is part of the Church of England. There is a kind of wider thing where lay people are part of that, but also ordained people. But the Church of England has this thing, church army evangelist. It's great. There's their own college training people to be evangelists in Sheffield, and it's part of the Church of England. Also, we've got lay readers who are recognised nationally under canon, who are part of the Church of England. And they do teaching, preaching, pastoral care, a whole range of things. So it's not like one thing, which is one of the arguments I've heard about youth and children's work, is, well, you all do different things, therefore we can't have one thing. It's just not true when you think about church army evangelists or lay readers, yet they have this recognition that's different and distinct. Why can't we have that for children's, youth and families workers in the Church of England? A recent report, which I highlighted in a couple of my posts, from the evangelistic task group, which I think is closed, but 2 years ago did a report, warmly welcomed by Synod. I love it when Synod warmly welcomes things, but I wish it would do more than that. So it was warmly welcomed that we should recognise youth specialisms, and that covered the kind of children's, youth and families workers. This is, and they say in their report, not a stepping stone to other ministry. And everybody in Synod's nodding and agreeing and thinking this is great. What has happened in the last 2 years that's made this a reality up and down the country? Don't know. So that's another thing I want to push on. And thinking about whether or not we should have canon for youth, children's and families workers in the Church of England particularly. But why not something similar with Baptists, Methodists and other denominations where there's a recognition this is a specific thing that we're doing. We're nurturing the next generation. We're looking at faith formation and discipleship. This is not babysitting children, young people till they're grown-ups. It's not a stepping stone to further ministry for us just to cut our teeth on children and young people, so to speak, in terms of ministry. This is the real deal, and it matters for children and young people growing up, but also it matters for the future of the church, for goodness sake. Finally, well, no, not finally, because I've got 4 things. Third thing is I'm doing a Church Times article which hopefully will raise the profile nationally, at least in the Church of England, but maybe generate discussion beyond the Facebook page and the blog stuff I've written that just says, again, here's some of the challenges, here's some of the issues around the pay, particularly in the remuneration of people who are in salaried work. One of the posts I looked at, which I highlighted, somewhere in London, £30,000 a year for a youth work job. That sounds incredible, and most places in the country that would be okay. In London, if you want that job, you need to be earning £49,000, not £30,000, just to pay rent on a 3-bedroom semi. £3,000 a month to rent a 3-bedroom semi. Somebody then said to me, well, in some parts of the world, that would be luxury, 3-bedroom semi. But if you've got a family and you're in ministry, I suppose you could do it in that place if you were willing to rent a 1-bedroom in a shared house, put all your family in there, and then you could do that job because that would only be £600 a month rent. So you could do that and shove your whole family in one room and serve the church in that way. So it's possible, it's just not realistic. And I think that's the challenge around some of the arguments that are going backwards and forwards about basically put up with what you're paid with. This is okay. You're in ministry. That's where the ministry thing suddenly steps in, despite the fact that we kind of supposedly have jobs. Oh, no, you're in ministry, and so you put up with what you're given. It's just not good enough. And it's not okay. And it's just happening. Meanwhile, we have clergy who are on stipends, as I said in my thing, where they get £23,800. That's the minimum for a stipend. And then, if you progress in terms of, there's no progression in the same way in youth and children's work, but if you progress in that sense, then you get paid more as you keep going up, if there is such a thing as up, which there isn't in the kingdom. But anyway, it's a whole different conversation. So the point is £23,000 plus all the other things that they get, housing, water rates paid, council tax, so they can be in ministry and not have to worry about those additional things. Because being in ministry, there's enough stress and worry just in terms of pastoral care and looking after people, which youth and children's workers are also doing. So, particularly, this is, anyway, I've said 3 things in a very kind of, that's 8 minutes so far, and I was trying to be really brief this morning. So finally, the final thing is there is a letter which I wrote a couple of years ago to the Archbishop of Canterbury. I don't know if he ever saw it. To be fair to him, he gets inundated with letters and posts, I'm sure, from all over the world, and probably has a team of people just in there to read the stuff and see whether it's something he needs to look at. So I don't even know if he saw it, but I got a very perfunctory reply. There was basically, as I've said, not our problem because there's no responsibility nationally for children's and youth workers employed locally. We need to change that if we change nothing. So the letter's there. I'm happy to kind of do the letter in a slightly different format. And then what I'd love you to do is take that letter, add your own comments or reflections and send it to the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of York, and the guy who I haven't thought about this before I did the video, I should have done this, is the guy who's the boss of ministry division nationally. So not the Board of Education, which is where at the minute we've got a fantastic person trying to support youth and children's work in the Church of England, particularly Mary Hawes, who is a legend, but not her. But, in terms of the education department, which is where she is, but ministry division, who, according to the evangelistic task group that I mentioned earlier, they say they're working with ministry division to try and make this a reality in terms of kind of youth specialism stuff. Heard nothing last 2 years. So it'd be great to write to them and say, what's the latest? What is happening with this? So fantastic you're doing this off the back of this report. Please tell me more. That kind of thing, and see what happens. So I'll share the letter. I've spoken enough. That's nearly 10 minutes of me when I thought it was going to be 3 minutes, but I got a little bit excited about halfway through. Thanks for listening, and let's keep pressing and keep asking questions and keep challenging. Behind me, you can see a whole load of stuff because I've moved offices. I'm really grateful to be sat in the Salvation Army's base in Clitheroe. They've been fantastic support for me, just as I've needed to move out of where we were living. And here we are. So I've got this space as an office, and our own home, just there isn't space now as we've moved. So this is brilliant. Thank you, Salvation Army. Thank you for listening, and let's keep asking the questions and knocking on doors, and hopefully one of them will open and we'll see change. I should probably stop this video now. Hang on.